everybody, it is Yulia. I gotta say one thing before I start this question and answer for hurricanes. 1 week ago today, I had a seizure at work, and after a few days in the hospital, I got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. So I'm still trying to get a handle on it. I had seizures pretty much throughout the whole of last week. But it's been like a day where I didn't have any seizures. So that's a really good thing. So why don't we... I am so sorry, my phone. So let's get started. I get a lot of questions about different topics that have to relate to hurricanes. And one of them is retired hurricane names. And a friend of mine was like, I know we have lists of names, but why do we why isn't Katrina on that list? Why isn't Rita on that list? Well, those names were retired. Yeah, in 2005 we had 5 hurricane names that were retired. And that would be Dennis, Katrina, Rita, Sean, and Wilma. And the World Meteorological Association is pretty much the organization that determines, hey, this hurricane has killed a lot of people, it caused a lot of damage, and we should retire that name, because if it goes back on a list of names, it would be really confusing, and it just like especially with Katrina and Rita, it hit the United States and it did kill a lot of people, especially Katrina, and that was historic, and they were like, oh, we should just kick Katrina out. Actually, we're using the same list as the 2005 hurricane season, which included Rita and Katrina. And as you can see, the names have changed. So Katrina turned into Katia, and Rita turned into Rena. So they changed names if it's a very strong storm, if it killed a lot of people, a lot of damage. So that's the retire names. And there was something I should mention. I call it the magic numbers. Okay? And I live in this central time zone in the United States. So my magic numbers are 1, 4, 7, and 10. And that is when the hurricane advisories come out. Normally it's 1 and 7, but if it's a strong storm, they might issue intermediate advisories, just to give people a sense of how strong this storm is. And actually, let me show you an example, because we do have a tropical depression in the Pacific, and I'll go into why we should look into the Pacific. And as you can see right here, it says Public Advisory 1A. That means it's an intermediate advisory. So every 3 hours, there's going to be an advisory issued. It's going to be either intermediate or a complete advisory. And for the magic numbers, these are UTC. I know some people get confused with Zulu, GMT, and UTC time. They're all the same thing. Okay, so normally the magic numbers in UTC time is midnight, which is 0000, 0600 UTC time, 1200 UTC time, and 1800 UTC time. But if it's like an intermediate advisory, it could be 0300 UTC time, 0900 UTC time, 1500 UTC time, and 2100 UTC time. And actually sometimes they might say, hey, you know what, this is the tropical depression, we should issue it, and it could be at 0300. That would be, the conversions are, I can barely do the conversions on this. So, next question. Why do we look at the Pacific? Well, the Pacific is pretty much the forecaster for the Atlantic, and we do have a tropical depression right here. So I'm gonna see. Yeah, here we go. Sometimes, not all the time, but this has happened in the past. Where there is a storm, let's say right here, it goes over into the Gulf of Mexico. And by that time, it's pretty much a low. But it can turn into a tropical storm or hurricane. And then it would like get a name and stuff like that. I also should say that tropical depressions do not get names. They get the wonderful name of one or two. But if it turns into a tropical storm, it gets a name. Next question. My good friend Zico was like, I know a little bit of Spanish, but what does little boy have to do with anything having to do with hurricanes? Well, El Nino is a very important role in the hurricane forecasting. I can't find a good map. Let me try to get a map here really quickly. Yeah, this is earthquakes. Nothing to worry about. So El Nino, let me draw the outline of this. So a long time ago, fishermen off the coast of Peru, it actually should be like this, would be like, hey, the water is very warm. And so they called it El Nino because they always discovered this right before Christmas. So they're like, it's little boy, and that's warm water. If it's cool water, it'll be La Nina, which means little girl. Now, when it's an El Nino year, which is pretty much right now we're in neutrals, so pretty much the forecast for the season is pretty much up in the air, and some models have suggested that in the middle of the hurricane season, El Nino will reappear, but it's pretty much up in the air. If we have an El Nino year, we have more activity in the Pacific and less activity in the Atlantic. If it's a La Nina year, we less activity in the Pacific and more activity in the Atlantic. I should also mention that the 2005 hurricane season, which included Katrina, that was actually a weak El Nino year. So if it's a weak El Nino, I don't really pay much attention to it, but if it's like a medium or strong, I would pay attention to it. Next question, the peak of hurricane season. Well, this year it's going to be early. We have something called the Bermuda High, which is pretty much located right here. And actually that influences something called the ICTZ. I can barely pronounce it. Even the abbreviation. It stands for the Intertropical Convergence Zone, which is pretty much right here. Now, if this Bermuda High, and it's doing this right now, moves this way, the ITZ, which is pretty much the baby cradle for tropical storms and tropical waves to develop, it will move like this, and that's the best chance for storms to develop. Now, we have it's like that. Like I said, this high is doing this right now. It is moving off to the northeast, and so the ITZ, I'm just gonna call it the womb, because it pretty much gives birth to any tropical waves and stuff. So the womb is going to move up here, pretty much. And I'll get into more details about the El Nino, La Nina, and pretty much this Bermuda High and ITZ stuff. And normally this high would start moving in, let's say, late July, early August, and that is when the ITZ moves up, and it pretty much puts us in the middle of things. And typhoons versus hurricanes. You don't really need to worry about this. If there is a cyclone, I'm going to call them cyclones. If there's the cyclone right here, it's a hurricane. This is the international date line. So if a hurricane moves over here, it turns into a typhoon. It really, you really don't need to know about the difference between hurricanes and typhoons, because we're not going to be focusing on typhoons. Or cyclones or stuff like, or other names, but it's basically the same thing. It's just, it's called a different name. And that is pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope we have for me, an active hurricane season, but no big hurricanes making landfall. That's what I hope. Happy hurricane season, and I'll see you guys later.